On today's History of Politics, we're going to talk about the 20th Amendment. The 20th Amendment elaborates more on Article 2 of the Constitution, but it gives some further specifics and deals with some eventualities that Article 2 does not cover. Article 2, of course, covers that um, it basically covers the powers of the president in terms of he's the commander in chief. The Constitution also says that all power, not all power, but it says that the executive office is the one that can do most of the things that it can do. Okay. Um, it doesn't mean that a president can do whatever he wants to do, but it means that the president is the one that when new laws come forward or legislation, the president is the one that can execute them by signing them and passing them. Okay. But let's talk a little bit more about the 20th Amendment. And then I'm going to give you some real world on this. Okay. So hold on to your socks because here we go. So Article 1 itself, the 20th Amendment, Sections 1 and 2 pretty much affix the date of when a president and a vice president legally come into power, which is on noon on January 20th after the election. Okay? There was a time, believe it or not, when the president and vice president didn't take office till a couple of months later. I believe it was March of that year. So the election would be in November, but they wouldn't take office until March. But they basically serve from, say, January 20th, 2025 until January 20th, 2029 before noon. At noon, it's over. It's over. So not until afternoon on January 20th, 2025, this is an example, of course, until before noon, January 20th, 2029, which means that in that time frame, a president and a vice president are still liable, even though they have the power, but they're still liable. Something to realize. A lot of people call it a lame duck session. What they mean by lame duck is because he's on his way out. That phrase is also used a lot when it comes to congressional candidates and elections, where a senator or a representative of the House has been voted out and Congress goes into what's called a lame duck session, okay, where they really don't get anything done unless it's an absolute emergency. Sections 3 and 4 basically deals with what happens if a president-elect dies before taking office. And the answer to that is this is Section 3, not Section 3 and 4. In Section 3, the answer to that is that if a president-elect dies before noon on January 20th of 2025, the vice president becomes the president. That's the succession. The vice president will become the president. Section 4 is the situation that we were just looking at in the beginning of this year. What to do if a president has not been chosen or is disqualified, or the vice president has not been chosen but is disqualified. Now, the reason this has bearing is because of Donald Trump and his insurrection deal. Donald Trump is an adjudicated insurrectionist by 4 different bodies, namely 2 Colorado courts at 2 different levels, 2 Colorado courts, the House Select Committee. Though these bodies have adjudicated him an insurrectionist. I tend to think more so towards the 2 Colorado courts, the Colorado Appeals Court and the Colorado Supreme Court because they reviewed the evidence. And even though that wasn't the issue that was going on trial, perhaps, but through the course of the trial, it was found and proffered by the judges that he not only, in their words, not only incited an insurrection, but participated in it. That's called adjudication. The same thing happened with E. Jean Carroll. In those cases, it was defamation. But the deeper question involved is, in order to prove defamation, you have to prove somebody lied about you to cause harm. Well, Donald Trump was demeaning the woman. So they had to look at the allegations that she made. And it was thus proven that she told the truth, that he did sexually abuse her, that he did sexually assault her without her consent. The only reason that it wasn't called rape is because of the New York law, a little quirk in it which says that in order to call it rape, it has to be penile insertion, where Donald Trump stuck one of his little digits up in there. That's the only difference. Having said that, he was adjudicated an insurrectionist. So the question is, what do we do with an adjudicated insurrectionist? Well, what should have happened was that it should have been brought before the Congress, because the Constitution in the 14th Amendment, Section 3 says the remedy for that situation is a 2/3 vote of the House and a 2/3 vote of the Senate can remove the disqualification. But they didn't do that. But let's say they did. Let's say they did. What would take place? Well, if you took out Trump, and let's say, for the sake of argument, you took out J.D. Vance on top of that, the 20th Amendment Section 4 tells us that the House would pick the president and the Senate would pick the vice president. That's the answer. There would have to be a vote of the House in order to pick the president. And there would have to be a vote of the Senate to pick the vice president. And it can't be a simple majority. It has to be a 2/3 vote. 2/3 vote would have to be accomplished in both the House and the Senate to pick the president and the vice president. So there's that. There's the answer. That's what you would need. And finally, Section 5 and 6 deal with the ratification and the effective dates of the amendment. So in terms of ratification, this amendment would go into action on October 15th after the date of ratification. For those of you that don't know, ratification would take a 2/3 vote of the House, 2/3 vote of the Senate, which obviously it got, and 38 state legislatures, which is 3/4 of the country. Okay. Obviously it had it because it's in the Constitution as we speak. And then let's say that it was ratified today. Then October 15th, it would take effect, because it has to be October 15th following the ratification. So let's say it got ratified on October 16th of this year. Then you would have to wait until October 15th of next year for it to take place. Also, there's a time limit, because after ratification, it also has to be ratified within 7 years after the date of ratification. It has to go into effect no later than 7 years, which means that if they don't ratify it within 7 years, it wouldn't pass. But obviously they did, because this amendment is in full effect as we speak. And that's the 20th Amendment. So obviously tomorrow we're winding down towards the end of it. Got a few more to go. We got a little bit more ways to go here. Tomorrow we'll be dealing with the 21st Amendment. And the rest of the week is going to be amendments pretty much. If you learned something today, like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.